I'm actually going to go into the noble Rawda, that sacred chamber is where you have the house of Fatima and Ali. Identify the pillar of Aisha. So just going to enter the just walking around, having a jaunt around the Masjid al-Nabawi at this time of night. It's about 10 o'clock and there's still a hive of activity. There's so many people walking around, and what's amazing is you find people from Indonesia to Malaysia to Turkey to Australia to every corner of the world, and you're seeing them in their own little groups doing their prayers. There's people praying in Malay, and you can see them with their features and their clothing and everything else, and in their own particular way they're all praying, they're all sending salutations upon the Prophet. And it really is a unique spectacle of human beings where their accidental differences dissolve away, and they take on this identity, which is a unified identity in the matrix of Tawheed and the love of the Prophet. And that's very, very unique. And everywhere you see, and also women freely moving about amongst the men. People are praying, and they're sending benedictions upon the Prophet. And some people are just sitting, contemplating. The atmosphere is lovely. The temperature's still warm, but there's a nice breeze. And I guess this hive of activity will continue all the way through the night. So right there we have the Bab Jibreel, where Gabriel, the angel, Archangel Gabriel, Jibreel would enter to meet the Prophet. Then next to it we have Bab al-Nisa for the women. Here we have a modern sort of funeral section. Just here on this area here, over here, we would have the houses of the Sahaba. The house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari was right here, and various other companions of houses were over here. And this, literally this section over there where Bab Jibreel is, was the Masjid al-Nabawi, and it was the homes of the Sahaba and the family of the Prophet. And that was basically it. That was Medina for you. Medina was basically that small section. And after that, of course, and up till today, you see the massive expansion. This is the holy chamber of the Prophet. It's 26.5 meters probably, and part of it's on the holy chamber where the Prophet is actually buried, and that's just about he's about 22 meters. And in here is where the house of the Prophet was, where his pulpit was, where the mihrab was. And the Prophet himself said that it is Rawdatun min Riyad al-Jannah. And there's different opinions about how far this goes, and some opinions even say lead all the way up to Masjid al-Ghumama, where the Eid Gah, or the place of Eid prayers, used to be, and hence some companions even built houses there so they could be included in this blessed place. But the Prophet said it is what is between my pulpit and between my house, or between my mihrab, is a garden from the gardens of paradise. And now, what does that mean? Could it be that it symbolizes the garden above of paradise? Could it mean that it symbolizes? Could it also mean that it symbolizes a place of tranquility and repose? Or could the literal word just be enough to say that this refers to the part of the that it is simply a section of paradise? The Prophet says, underneath my pulpit is the hawd, the pool, and it truly does feel very, very sacred. The Ottomans embellished it. There's a lovely green carpet here which defines it from the rest of the mosque. And there are 6 pillars in this mosque, in this particular area over there, which specifically relate to the 6 trees that were there, and they were meticulously maintained. So Ustuwana Mukhallaq, Ustuwana Aisha, Ustuwana Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ustuwana Sarir, where, for example, Ali ibn Abi Talib stood guard for the Prophet. It's known as Ustuwana Ali ibn Abi Talib. There was another one which is known as Ustuwana Hannana, the weeping tree. There used to be a tree which the sound of weeping could come from it. It was known as Ustuwana Hannana. So it's a very unique place, and it's very difficult to get into because it's highly, it's so small, and there's so many people trying to get in. And each one of those pillars is marked. There's a marking that tells you exactly what it is, and like you can read there, ما بين بيتي ومنبري روضة من رياض الجنة. And that's the sacred chamber over there.
عرفتك في كل شيء بدا وفي البحر أو في مرور السحاب. الله 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 لا إله إلا الله. رؤياك رسول الله وشوقا إلى رؤياك رسول الله. يحن القلب يا حضار، يحن القلب يا حضار.
Here you can see more of the green carpet, and special dignitaries come and are allowed to pray here. And the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima is nearby, the minbar of Fatima, the mihrab, of Fatima, and the door which led into the mosque of the Prophet from the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima was also. So it's one of those places which still has a very, very powerful and unique place of the Prophet.
أسوتنا وقدوتنا وأفضلنا وأعظمنا، فأسوتنا وقدوتنا وأفضلنا وأعظمنا هو المحبوب سيدنا، هو المحبوب سيدنا محمد.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون. As the verse says, do not raise your voices in the presence of the Prophet or speak to each other loudly like you do, lest it cause a loss of your actions. And as Iqbal says, that खामोश ए दिल हरी महफिल में जिलाना मत, अदब है पहला करीना मोहब्बत के करीनों में. So this is a place of reverence, of awe. في مرور السحاب. actually going to go into the noble Rawda of the Prophet. It's very difficult getting in. I missed the permit and spoke to him in Arabic, and he allowed us to go in. We're going to go into the actual Rawda now. Before we were going in the thoroughfare where people go and give their salam to the Prophet, we will now actually go into the area known as Riyadh al Jannah. So we're just going to go in. So just going to enter the Riyadh al Jannah from the area known as Bab Jibreel, the door of Jibreel, where Jibreel would come to the Prophet and give wahi. Often was the case he came in the form of Dihya al-Kalbi. So we're going in from this particular Bab. Actually, it's called An-Nisa gate. So the Bab Jibreel is next, and this is An-Nisa, the gate of the women. So this is Riyadh al-Jannah. We were walking on the opposite side earlier, and this is, you can see the rest of Masjid al-Nabawi, and this is the most auspicious side of Masjid al-Nabawi, the most holy place where you offer your 2 rak'at of prayer, and there's people offering prayer here. And the special pillars which I mentioned, where the pulpit of the Prophet was, and that's the sacred chamber over there, and the special pillars have designations as to why they were there. If you can pinpoint some of them, because people are praying there, so it's going to be hard to. There's a particular pillar, but I can't fully pinpoint it at the moment. So this is the section of the Riyadh al-Jannah. So previously we were in the thoroughfare where you just go and give your salam to the Prophet, but this is the actual part where you queue up, and it's very difficult to get into. And there you can see some of the pillars which I was talking about. They're marked. Now I think that's one of them there. I'm not sure which one it is. The specific colours, and they're very different to the others, but there's basically 6 pillars here. One of them is known as the pillar of the Ustuwana of Hannana, which used to be the tree the Prophet used to lean on when he used to give sermons. And when the mimbar was made for the Prophet and he stopped using the tree started crying, and it cried so much the Prophet had to embrace it, and he embraced the tree, and the companion then took the tree away, and he offered, apparently the Prophet had offered the tree 2 things, that he either replants it or it goes to heaven, and it chose to go to heaven. And then the companion took it and ate that particular tree, but it wept uncontrollably because the Prophet had stopped giving his khutbah from the tree, and he created a mimbar. Then there's another particular pillar which is known as the pillar of Aisha, and she's known to have said that if people knew the value of that pillar, they would flock to it and they would cast lots. And the Muhajirun used to also come to that particular pillar. There is another 3 pillars then which are near the sacred chamber. The one is known as the pillar or the Ustuwana of the Wafud, where the different tribes used to come, and delegations to meet the Prophet in the Bashir al-Nabi. So that was a dedicated area where they would meet the Prophet. There was another one which is known as Ustuwana al-Haras, or Ustuwana al-Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. and that particular one is related to people who would guard the Prophet, his house. They apparently say it was the house of Aisha, where the Prophet would be, and different companions would guard him, and most often it would be Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then after that, you have Ustuwan al Sarir, and that particular pillar is where the Prophet used to perform the last 10 days of Ramadan. He would be in there and he would perform i'tikaf for 10 nights. And apart from one occasion, he did not, and when he was in Medina, I believe, and he would perform i'tikaf. Um, and then at the back, you have Ustuwana Jibreel, Gabriel's pillar, which is the one where the Prophet would often meet Jibreel and receive wahi, which is known as and he would also come in the form of the handsome youth known as Dihya al-Kalbi to the Prophet. And then finally we have Ustuwana Tahajjud, and that's in at the back of the house of Fatima and Ali, by the door of Fatima and opposite the mihrab of Fatima. And there they would basically, the Prophet would lead Tahajjud, and of course on one occasion people would gather behind him, and he took his mat away so it doesn't become a common thing. And that's all in this area. And as the Prophet says, ما بين قبري ومنبري وما بين بيتي ومنبري روضة من رياض الجنة. It's a place between, it's a piece of paradise, whether it's, and I must say, you feel, is it metaphor or is it real? But you do have a real sense of paradise, of reverence, awe, spirituality, peace. And he said the pool of paradise is below my mimbar, my pulpit. Most of these pillars and everything are all Ottoman, from the Ottoman period. It's very rare that we get in here. Nowadays, they have an app which you need to use to get in. Um, there's a lot of people that have got in here, and praying here has so much reward. Uh, this particular section, if you make prayers here, the reward is substantial. And that's the sacred chamber over there, where the Prophet is buried. And at the back of that sacred chamber is where you have the house of Fatima and Ali, um, Sayyidah Fatima and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Their houses at the back of this particular sacred chamber. And that's in memory of the Prophet. They have a pulpit erected there. That's where the pulpit would be. And again, it's all Ottoman. This is all from the Ottoman period. Just sitting here in the very place where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam would pray, would this is the very place where he formed the mosque, where when he came to Medina and he knew the tribes, the Aus and the Khazraj, were fighting amongst themselves, he decided that wherever his camel alights, Qaswa alights, that's where his house will be. And it happened to be exactly where Hazrat Abu Ayyub al-Ansari's house was. And he then, from two orphans, he bought this land, who wanted to gift him this land, Sahel and Suhail. Instead, he bought the land, and the money was paid by Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. And he formed a mosque. The very first thing he did was build a mosque, and he built it with his own hands. He brought the rocks and the mud and the straw to build this very, very humble structure, which became the very epicenter of this amazing message, which will, till today, is going, and human beings are continuously being affected. And the movement he created, and Medina was nothing more than the mosque of the Prophet. There was nothing more here. He had that built, and then a few years later he built his house. But originally it was just a mosque. And then he formed a brotherhood between the companions, and of course we know the story of various brotherhoods formed between the Ansar and the Muhajirin, and various between rich and poor and different strata of society. And he himself took Ali ibn Abi Talib as his brother in that mu'akhat, in creating the brothers. And then the prayer was established, and the adhan was established, and a pulpit was erected. But before that, he would pray by a tree. And it goes to show that the Prophet, how he came to unite, as the Quran says, you were a warring people, tribal people, and you warred over anything and everything. And they would have gone to war and battle over where the Prophet chose to have the mosque. And rather, he asked the camel to decide. The wisdom, the message, the humanity, the humility, the ability to unite for a common purpose, for a common goal, and to appreciate human beings and their idiosyncrasies is truly a bewildering aspect of the Prophet's life. He was able to change such a backward, tribalistic, barbaric society almost into one of the most amazing civilizations, which still has so much and will continue to contribute to the life of people um, from his time to the end of times. And yeah, this was his humble home, humble mosque, where he had nearby his own house, the house of his wives, and then he built the house of Fatima and Ali, which itself is again a beacon of for all those who love justice in the world and all those who seek justice. The house, the humble mud house of Fatima, um, is parallel to that of the Prophet, and it is a house of justice, of virtue, of piety, and that is the very door where the Prophet would come and say, Assalamu alaikum ya Ahl al Bayt al Nabuwa. After the verse of Surah Al Ahzab, verse 33, was revealed, he would continuously stand outside the door of Fatima, and he would show great respect and awe and to the Muslims of this daughter of his, Fatima. So her unique status is unparalleled amongst the women of Islam and history even. Um, but this particular area is known as Riyadh al-Jannah. And praying here, you feel you are sitting in the very same place where you could imagine the Ashab al-Suffah, those people who were the poor immigrants from Medina, from Makkah, whom the Prophet established certain, said they need to be looked after and give them money and give them food because they are poor and destitute, who had emigrated and who had given up a lot. And I think in this we must realize that the companions of the Prophet, indeed, they are a variety of individuals amongst them, each with their own propensities and predilections, and they all have unique stories and to benefit us. The early community truly was a a community which must be appreciated and their lives studied, because they were the first recipients of the message, and their actions and the way they came to accept and form the early Muslim society is something which really needs to be studied rather than cut out from history or not looked at at all. And that's where I think many sects of Islam can learn, and different sects hold different views of the companions. I think it's a middle ground definitely must be found where we can appreciate each other's qualities and come to a appreciation of Islam as a whole. Um, but yeah, sitting in this particular location is very, very, it's a privilege. Just going to be leaving now, and I'd love to try and pinpoint these pillars, but I can't pinpoint them. And I think it's these colored pillars which are the unique pillars. So yeah, and that's the pulpit of the Prophet, and in there we have the pillars which I try to identify: the pillar of Aisha, the pillar of Abu Lubaba, the pillars of the delegations, and but it's a unique place. It's the best place. It's the most auspicious and holiest, and the most worthy of places to be in when you visit this Masjid al-Nabi. This is another view. They had curtains up earlier, but so it's 2 a.m. here, and still activity going on, although it's calmed down a bit. But the morning prayer will be in about 3 hours. But look how expansive this area is. It's massive, but it's still small. Over there, there's further parts of it over there, and it's just all hotels here. You got the two museums that tell you how the Masjid al-Nabawi was expanded and its history, and then the rest of it's this huge, massive, expansive plaza, but it's still small. It still needs further expansion. Now that over there is the Masjid al-Ghammama, where the Prophet prayed for rain and clouds appeared. And also this very section here used to be where the Prophet would lead the Eid prayers. And our hotel is literally just behind there. It's quite calm at this time of night. You can have a seat over here. And yeah, people are heading over to the mosque. It's open 24/7 by the looks of it. A lot of the shops have closed, but it's very peaceful. And the weather's always warm and the air is quite nice. Not sure what sort of tree this is they've planted. They planted a few of them, but not sure what it is. So this is the mosque of Abu Bakr, and that minaret on it is really nice. Ottoman, of course. Lovely minaret.